So let's just keep smiling. So, good evening, everyone, or well, at least those of you who are in Europe today. I do think that we have quite a diverse audience today. I hope we have lots of entrepreneurial people and entrepreneurs, but also from their mindset and from all over the world. I would suppose we have tonight a special guest. He is also not in Europe. We are based in Switzerland currently, but Eric Muntz, the main guest of tonight, the CTO of Mailchimp, he's actually joining us from Atlanta tonight. So I am Nora Buser. I am a managing partner at the Impact Hub Bern, and I have the pleasure to co-host this event for you tonight. At this point, I would like to take a minute to give big thanks to the embassy of the US Embassy for making this event happen tonight. So we have tonight a very interesting 1 hour ahead. So what will happen? We will have approximately 30 minutes chat between Eric Muntz and my dear colleague, Frederica. And she is one of the co-founders of Impact Hub Bern, as well as a managing partner. After this about 30 minutes chat between Eric and Frederica, we will go to a Q&A with Eric. So if you come up with any questions, anything you'd like to ask from Eric during the talk, please post it on the chat, whether you're following the event live on YouTube or on Facebook. I'll be checking into the chat and will then present the most interesting questions to Eric at the end of the event tonight. So without any further delays, let's jump right into the chat with Eric and Frederica. Please go ahead, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Nora. A warm welcome to everybody out there from my side as well. Good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. And many thanks to Eric, our special guest. We feel very honored to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. At Impact Hub Bern, we have lots of people coming in every day. Startups, entrepreneurs, people from SMEs, large companies, and so forth. And we do lots of things, but funny enough, we are known for being a co-working space, which is actually just a tiny fraction of what we do. And Eric, funnily enough, there's similarity from us to you guys at Mailchimp, because you're also mostly known for that wonderful platform where you can create these great newsletters with, but you're so much more. And you have so much more to offer for small businesses in particular. And many of these services are actually for free. So I would love to hear your little pitch about Mailchimp.
Yeah, sure. So Mailchimp is an all-in-one marketing platform for small businesses. We specialize on businesses that are trying to grow online, specifically in the e-commerce space and the digital app space. We, like you noted, with the same with Impact Hub, we are sort of more known for one thing, and we are becoming more and more known for more than that. So it's in our name, Mailchimp. We started in email in about 2001. We now have about 1,200 employees all spread out through the US, Canada. And we're really focused on small business, laser focused on helping empower small businesses and helping them grow everything they need from an all-in-one marketing platform. So we have websites, you can buy a domain, you can build landing pages, you can of course still send emails, and trying to do what we can to help small businesses, especially right now in the way the state of the global economy. So that is Mailchimp in a nutshell.
Cool, thank you so much. Can you talk a bit about your early years of your career through until maybe the time of your early years at Mailchimp? Because things apparently could have gone really a different way. You could have become a manager at Microsoft at one point, for instance. And tell us a bit about these early days.
Yeah, sure. I think saying I could have been a manager at Microsoft is very generous. I was interviewing with Microsoft when I was in college. And so throughout college, I worked at a software company in Atlanta. And I actually started in tech support and went into quality assurance and learned how to write code to automate scripts from there. And then really had some really great, more senior employees take me under their wing and help me learn how to write code and teach me the way. And I did that while going to college so that I could pay for college. And so when I graduated, they were starting a startup. This was the late 90s when the .com boom was really big. And I was interviewing with Microsoft and I was talking with them. And I'm pretty introverted. We've talked about this. I'm a little bit terrified of moving to a new city by myself, especially as a young 20-something. So I thought, well, I can go back home to Atlanta with people who I know, or I could take this chance on a big company. And so I definitely went home and with people I know and joined a startup. I was one of the first 5 at a startup called Zap Media that was building a home entertainment device that I guess if you squint, it would look like Apple TV, but without all the great partnerships and all the great hardware and all of that. So it was an embedded Linux system doing media development. So you could play MP3s and all of that through it. It was super, super fun. I learned a ton. We did not wisely spend money as many companies made the mistake of doing in the .com boom. Went out of business. And then I went from a startup in Atlanta to the federal government in Washington, DC in the course of just a couple of months. I moved up to DC because my girlfriend at the time was getting her master's degree and I liked her a lot and wanted to follow her. She's my wife now. So I made a really great choice. Ended up working for the federal government for a few years and doing work that I just absolutely loved, super passionate about. I worked for federal probation officers who in the United States is kind of like a mixture between social work and law enforcement for people coming out of our prison system. It was super great work. And then I moved to Atlanta, bounced around a bit, ran my own consulting company for about 4 or 5 years. And as part of that, I started building BlackBerry applications. I found a little niche. I built BlackBerry applications for the federal government. And I started building applications for third parties. So I'd find a company that had an existing customer base and an open API and a need for a BlackBerry app, and I would build them. And my second one was called MiniChimp, which was Mailchimp for the BlackBerry. And very interestingly, the day I launched it, I got an email from a guy named Ben Chestnut, who happens to be CEO and co-founder of Mailchimp, saying, "Hey, we love your app. We notice you're in Atlanta. We have a hard time finding engineers. Would you like a job?" And I said, "No." I said, "Consulting's going great. I'm good. I'm trying to do the entrepreneur thing." And we just exchanged emails and it was truly phenomenal. It sounded like a dream come true. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's talk. I went in and talked and it was like Willy Wonka. Like it was just this amazing, amazing environment. Basically everything I'd been looking for. It was a lot like that startup that I worked for in the late 90s, but actually a profitable business run very well. And so I made the leap. I shut down the consulting business. I actually had one full-time employee and I gave him the business. And I went to Mailchimp as a software engineer and never looked back. I was the 33rd employee and the 3rd engineer working on our product. And really helped grow the team, helped grow the product. And now we're at 1,200 people. There's over 400 in engineering now. And so that's the glimpse into my career.
Great stuff. So within the last roughly 8 years, you made a very inspirational, personal and professional journey from a self-identified grumpy engineer to an accomplished C-level. Can you tell us a bit about that? What did it take you to make that huge journey?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny that you call out the grumpy engineer. I was absolutely that engineer. Especially in my tenure with the government, I was surrounded by great people, and frustrated with some of the processes. And so I was super grumpy about it. And I tended to be that type of engineer who would go into projects and say, everything's wrong. This is all wrong. Bah, it's no good. And here's what we have to do. And bah, and I'd go in and with super high energy, try to make everything better code wise. And I ended up having this just phenomenal manager, a guy named Frank Fuller. Talk about him often. He was a former probation officer who went and worked in DC to work on some high profile projects for the branch that I was working for. And he and I got really tight. We were working on a BlackBerry project together. And before a meeting, he pulled me aside and said, hey, I want you to do me a favor. We're going to go into this meeting and I want you to just not say anything. I want you just to like look at me, and until I give you a nod, just don't say anything. Just sit and listen. And I was like, okay, well, I trust Frank. I don't know what he's up to, but okay. So I go in and I just sit there listening, and I'm like actually sitting on my hands wanting to say like, no, you're wrong. This is all wrong. This is dumb. Let's do something else. I'd look over at him and he'd be like, no, can't talk yet. Eventually he lets me talk, and I do. And the meeting goes really, really well. And I was like, Frank, what in the world just happened? And he said, I taught you the value of listening. I taught you how to listen to people and how to get your ideas across in a respectful, agreeable manner. And now let's talk about how to get better at that. And it was really like, wow, I just sort of hit like running into a brick wall, right? It was the feedback that I really needed. I thought a lot about it. And when I joined Mailchimp, I was very deliberate about, okay, this is a chance to make a first impression. What's the impression I want to make? What do I want my brand to be? What do I want people to think of me? And I told myself, I want people to think that I'm the helpful engineer, because I really did want to be helpful. And I just was going about it the wrong way, right? I was going about it by saying like, no, everything's wrong. Let me go in and fix it. And I thought, okay, what I'll do instead is figure out how to empower all the other people around me and use engineering skills to do that. And I'll be super deliberate about it. So I went in and helped support. I went through support training. Apparently I was one of the first engineers to say I want to go through support training. I helped the finance team, and it just really worked out super well. I think it turned out to be a really good way to help engineering empower the rest of the business.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
For sure.
Well, if you would sum up what a good leader is for you, do you have any personal opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. I think a lot of people end up mixing leader and manager a little bit too much. And so if we're talking about a good manager, then I think it's someone who understands that management is not one size fits all, that everybody needs different things, right? I have a colleague I work with often, always comes to mind when I think about someone managing me, that they should manage me very differently than they should manage him. There's a guy named John. He's our chief product officer. He's absolutely brilliant. He needs no time to think through things. He can just immediately hear it and get it and understand it. And I'm more of the type that's like, let me sit with that for a day and then we'll have a discussion about it. And so if you were managing both of us, you may think, okay, well, either they both need to sit for a day or they both are going to have the answers right away. And you would need to understand that everybody's a little bit different and everybody has different stress reactions and different ways of coping with stress and figuring out like what tasks are going to be stress relievers that aren't just take time off work, because that's just not sustainable forever. And so, if we're talking about leading as a manager, I would say that the biggest thing is understanding that people are people, which means they're all different. And you just have to get to know the person and get to know what really makes them tick, and how to find ways to incentivize that and how to find ways to take care of them. As a leader, I would say some of the best things that I've seen are really finding what's important for the group of people who you are leading and figuring out how to get that very deliberately communicated and repeated over and over and over. I think a lot of leaders are like, end up being like, I've said this so many times, I don't want to say it again. I love saying it again. I love being like, okay, we're going to, hopefully we can say 1, 2, 3, and we can all say it at the same time. That means that like, we're all really getting it. Right. So I think just like finding the things that really make the group or the organization or whatever it is you're leading move forward, and really sticking to it, and like getting good feedback on whether it's working and how it's working, and massaging and changing. And, you know, as is the title for this talk, Mailchimp's motto is listen hard, change fast. And I think that is just a really, really, really important part of leadership.
That's a very good topic that we'll cover right now. I would love to talk a bit about failure culture, your own failure culture, and then at Mailchimp as well. So in Switzerland, we generally struggle to open up about failures, and it's simply not a part of our culture to embrace failure. And funnily enough, I came across your Twitter account recently, and there you're super upfront with your own failures. One of your posts reads like something like, I've written some really brutally bad SQL, oops. So honestly, quite frankly, nobody expects that from you. And yeah, in Switzerland, very few leaders would do that. So tell us, why are you so open about your own failures?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'm not sure I actually know why I'm so open about them. I just feel like if you're not talking about ways you failed, then your success feels maybe even a little cheapened, because success, I think, comes from learning and comes from failing a little bit. And I think it can go too far, though. I do think people say like, oh, if you're not failing, you're not trying, fail, fail, fail. Success is definitely the goal. I just really feel like to get to success, you're going to have to probably fail a little bit. If you've never experienced failure, I envy you, I guess. But for me, it's like, why hide the fact that I've failed? I'm sure there are other people out there who are almost paralyzed by thinking that they might fail. And so if I can say, hey, I feel like I'm pretty successful right now, I could be more successful, I still have a lot to learn, but I have failed along the way, then it helps other people sort of unlock that paralysis. And, you know, that's so funny you mentioned that tweet, because a subtle thing that I don't think a lot of people saw in that tweet is another guy who I know through the internet who has started a business responded and said, oh, I remember, so one of my failures was, we had a problem with a cache. A cache needed to be busted, and I really aggressively busted the cache. And when I say aggressively busted, I mean I just deleted all the settings any user was storing. And it was not a great moment. We found it probably a day after I'd already launched it, so I had to go through and find all the logs of people who could be affected by it, and it was over 20,000. So our CEO had to send an email to 20,000 Mailchimp employees, or I'm sorry, Mailchimp customers. And the email was great. People received it really well. This guy who tweeted back to me about it said, I actually had saved this email because it was a really good apology. And I said, yeah, you know, I use that all the time because one of my biggest rules is never hide a problem. And I didn't hide the problem. I went and told our CEO, you know, I was kind of like, oh, I'm so sorry, Ben. He didn't hide the problem from our customers. And now here I am 9 years later, and I'm the CTO. I'm the highest level technologist in the company after having done that as a senior engineer 9 years prior. And one of the things that's very easily lost in this whole story and this whole tweet thread is that when I said that thing about not hiding a problem, and I use this as an example, and now I'm the CTO, one of the people who liked it is Ben Chestnut, the CEO who had to send that email and also was the person who promoted me, right? So talking about my failures and declaring them helped me. And of course, you know, the next question is then like, okay, well, why is Ben so patient and he okay with failure? But I guess it's just part of our culture and part of knowing that, you know, if we're going to empower the underdogs, we can't sort of sit high on a pedestal and act like we never mess up. And I think it's it's super important for people to understand that mistakes happen. It's how you recover from the mistakes and own the fact that you made them.
Wonderful. Yeah, being very transparent and never hiding a problem is definitely part of being a great leader or manager. Yeah. Wonderful. So can you say a couple of sentences about your specific motto at Mailchimp with the listen hard, change fast aspect? So how does it actually look like?
Yeah, well,
in practice, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it's all about our customers. So one of our core leadership behaviors is being customer obsessed. And so listen hard, change fast is really all about listening to your customers. So our customers being, millions of small businesses that rely very heavily on our marketing platform and our technology and our advice in the space to succeed. It's all about listening to them and then changing when and where we need to make them more successful, right? So, and then how you listen a bunch of ways. So we have feedback in the product. As users use our product, we've got logs going everywhere that we can go and figure out what they're using, what they're not using, how they're using it, whether they're succeeding or not. One of the big things we do from a technology standpoint is we use continuous deployment. So we deploy all day, every day, 50 to 100 times a day, we're deploying our software. And we can detect very, very quickly when things have gone wrong and roll them back, fix them, make changes, whatever we need to. And so that's a huge part of it from a technology standpoint, is acknowledging that, like, it's software. Things are not going to always go perfectly, as you've seen. And so the quicker we can acknowledge that they're not going perfectly and fix them, the better it'll be for all of our customers. We know small businesses are super busy. I'm sure you know this with Impact Hub. They're super duper busy. And so if our software is in a bad state and we waste 10 minutes of their time, that could be a third of the time they actually had to do their marketing. It could be half the time they had to do their marketing. So we have to be very, very specific and careful about that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. In the audience, we have lots of people with challenging jobs, like, as you said, startups, business owners, managers, and you've gone through constant change, adaptation, and a rapid growth in your company. And I know that you stress mental health among your employees. And I'm wondering, what measures have you put in place to prevent burnouts and promote mental health?
Yeah, for sure. This is a big topic right now. Of course, 2020 has been a hard year for the world. It's been a very hard year for Americans. I'm not sure how much of all of that is super visible everywhere, but it has been a very tough year. And so, we've been working from home. I have little tick marks here that I've been tracking to show me how long we've been working from home. And it's what is that, 6? So it's been 30 weeks now that we've been fully working from home, and that's an adjustment. I noted earlier that I'm an introvert, so it actually hasn't been super hard for me, but I know it's been very, very hard for other people. So we have added in some benefits. We've given folks stipends so that they can build out their home offices. That's been helpful for me. I'm standing up at my standing desk now. Prior to this, I didn't have a good desk, but now I can sit down and stand up and all of that. Got a good chair. And then, we've got a lot of services that, an email just went out today saying, here's access to services. We have a 24-hour hotline. People can use sick days for mental health days now. And then, for me, one of the things that I really focus on, and I think maybe you're glomming onto something I talked about earlier, is as a manager, everyone absorbs stress differently. So what I try to do is keep really good track of the people who report to me and the types of activities that are actual work activities that de-stress them. So as an example, I was once managing an engineer, and she is super great. but she, very much like me, can get caught in decision matrices and decision paralysis, right? And with software, you start to go down a decision path and you're like, well, I could do it this way, or I could do it that way. I guess I'll do it this way. And then if I do it that way, I do it this way, and then that way, and then this way. And what happened if I had taken a wrong turn over here and do it this way and that way and this way and that way? And you start to just get like, oh my gosh, it starts to become too much. And so what I noticed worked really well with her is if I could detect that she was in that mode, I could say, hey, you know what? For the next week, I really just need you to knock out some bugs. Just go and fix bugs. And I call them mow the lawn projects because it's just like, they can get difficult and it can be challenging, but usually those types of projects are just like, you know, kind of rote, go do this thing, go pull off from a list of tasks and do this thing. And what would happen is those really difficult, like snowbally decisions would sort of move to the background. And, you know, one of the things that I've learned through taking piano and some other stuff is that sometimes when you take a break from something, it really helps you solve the thing. You know, I actually sometimes get frustrated with piano and I get better at it when I just don't play for a little while, come back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got it. And so I found that happening with her and was like, oh, okay, there's a way that we can view work stress and be able to solve it with a task at work that's not just like, oh, you're burned out, go take a vacation, right? So that the curve doesn't just like go way up and peak and then go down because you've taken a vacation and then just climb back up, right? I feel like the stress curve should just kind of oscillate across like a medium path. And, you know, there's going to be times at work that are going to be stressful. You have customers, your customers are going to need you at certain times. At Mailchimp, our customers are marketers, and the end of the year is always a big moment for our customers, which means it's always a big moment for us. And so during that time, it's going to be pretty stressful. And then after that time, let's de-stress a little bit and let's prep before it and de-stress a little bit before it. So encourage people to take vacations and all of that, but also encourage work that's super meaningful for customers and super meaningful for the business, but can be also stress relieving for folks. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I bet the Switzerland and the US are no different in terms of that extroverted behavior is sort of favored in a business context. And you mentioned it already, you are an introvert. I can very much relate to that. How did you learn to thrive in an extrovert environment?
That's a great question. I'm not entirely sure I have. So I'll just state up front that I'm not really sure I have the answers. You know, events like this are pretty good for me because it's just me and you. I don't feel like, you know, I'm having to expend like so much energy being on. But really as an introvert, right, the whole thing is about where you draw energy from. Do you draw it from being alone? Do you draw it from being around people? And I definitely draw my energy from being alone. And it takes a lot of energy out of me to be not just in a crowd, but especially to be the center of the crowd. And so it took me a while to get used to that as a leader and a manager. But I think part of it is just I gave myself permission to be okay with that and be the leader and the manager who wasn't always the one running everything. Then you can delegate to other people and say, hey, I'm going to empower these people by letting them run the meeting or, you know, bringing them forward. And then other times I just knew, okay, it's going to take a lot of energy out of me. I'm going to need a break after it. And being able to do that was super important. And the other big thing is that I realized kind of what I was talking about earlier, that it takes me a minute to process and then I can engage and really respond to things. And in many settings, I say that up front. So I let people know like, hey, just so you know, I'm not zoned out. I'm actually paying attention. I just need a minute to process. It takes me a little while. In fact, I may not even really get back to you until tomorrow, but that's my process. And I feel like saying that up front gives people permission to sort of work with you a different way. And that has been very handy for me, just to say up front that like, this is who I am. This is how I work. I know we may work differently, but this is what's important to me. I also find that other people who are introverted on your team really appreciate it because then they know, oh, good, I have permission to not always be on in the moment and I can I can take a day to respond as well.
Yeah.
But I really do think for me, it's like finding time to get down. And like, when we started, you and I were sort of dancing and doing this. I have to do that type of thing every time before I talk, right? I learned from someone the Superman pose, which is like this. And I have to do that before I talk. In fact, it just made me feel so much better already just speaking. So finding some things like that have been super helpful for me.
Thank you so much. You mentioned a lot of important topics within that subject. Thank you so much. And I'm sure you also have an open eye, and you identify people very easily who have the same sort of introvert personality, and you can help them to thrive and to shine, because you understand when they might need a different, might need to be treated differently or something. Great stuff.
Yeah, hopefully so.
We'll go on to the last topic before the questions. Nora, I hope you're getting ready with the questions. But the last topic is also very important. We're going to talk about diversity, inclusion, mixed teams. And we all know research shows that having a very diverse team is super beneficial to companies and teams and projects, also financially, but still lots of companies or even whole industries sort of ignore this. So I know that recently you've started to opening up about underrepresented people in tech. And can you tell us more about what you're actually opening up about?
Yeah, for sure. It's a pretty big topic for me. I've tended to be a little quiet about this. Some of it probably for fear of like internet bullies or whatever. And some of it just because I don't really know how to talk about it. And what has unlocked me being able to start to talk a little bit more is by stating up front, which I think is really important. So I'm going to state it up front now. I don't have all the answers. I don't know all the answers. I wish I did. If I did, I would go and like post them everywhere and teach them to everyone. But what I do want to do is have conversations. And so one of the big things for me that makes this important is that it's really personal. So I look like I'm a white guy. I'm not a white guy. You might call it white presenting. But back when I, had hair, I probably looked a little more like Colin Kaepernick here in the background. My mom is Black and my dad is white. And so I grew up as a white presenting biracial man in America. My parents divorced when I was pretty young and I lived with my mom. So I would go live the world being treated like a white man. And then I'd go home and shut the door and I would enter a Black household. And so I saw really upfront the struggles and how things are different and how differently you're perceived, and the privilege of being, in America, being treated like not just white person, but white man, right? All of those things are important. And so it's really personal, and I feel like it's time for me to start engaging more in conversations about it, and understanding that my point of privilege is important and I can lend it to people in a business environment. I can help talk about, where people may be having biases and they don't even think they are having them, and ways that we can change things like how we recruit and how we talk about diversity. And, a recent example, people talk about metrics, right? And oftentimes people are saying your team should be at this percentage, or you should hire at this percentage. And I recently had a conversation with some engineering leaders who said, what we really should be focused on is making our company a great place to work for underrepresented people. And once you've done that, and once you've found metrics that support that, the hiring metrics will fix themselves, because it maybe not fix themselves. You still also need to really take care of them and work with your recruiting partners and everyone else. But, part of the reason that things aren't diverse is that nepotism makes the world go around, and people hire people in their networks, and people's networks tend to be people like them. So if it was just like, someone who looked like me saying, hey, let's go out and hire my friends. Most of my friends are going to be white people, white men. And the next thing you know, you've got a totally homogenous environment. And so building a work environment where people have psychologically safety and they feel like, they can really contribute and they can come to work and like belong there and not have to like try to be someone else or make excuses for who they are or any of that. Then you get a diverse environment and then you get some really, really, really great work output. So that's what we're trying to work toward. Mailchimp's invested in this. We just hired a vice president of culture and inclusion. She's super great. She's going to really help us move forward on this. Super excited about it.
Thank you so much. That's such an important message, and that's a true gift you bring to the world. Thank you so much. Nora, can you start putting questions out?
Yes, sure. There has been, for sure, a few interesting questions. I think you like this first one, definitely. So how does Colin Kaepernick inspire you? Person in the background.
Yeah. So, a few things on that. This is not just because I think what Colin Kaepernick did was great and that the reactions to Colin Kaepernick were pretty horrible. This is also me supporting a Black artist who I like a lot. So there's an artist named Nicholas Smith with 2 Ks, Nikkolas. Go look him up. Super amazing. But I'm also a huge sports fan, as maybe you can see it over here. There's a baseball up there somewhere. And so, what Colin Kaepernick tried to do and the way he approached it and, the way he just was unwilling to back down, although all he did was take a knee, right? It just represents so much to me of the conversations that we're not having and the way we are vilifying certain types of people and certain types of background and certain types of behavior. I could go on this for a while, but Colin just took a knee. That's all he did was took a knee during the national anthem and got blacklisted from his career and really shunned by a lot of people, as opposed to people saying, "Oh, you're taking a knee. Can we have a conversation about that? Why are you taking a knee? What is it you're trying to make better?" And, the fact that in America, Black Lives Matter is considered political is heavy. It means a lot. Matter is like the very least, right? It's like just table stakes. So it means a lot to me. It means a lot right now. It's not just like, oh, I liked the picture and I like the artist. No, I'm sending a message. When people see this picture behind me, they probably know what I stand for and what it is I care about.
I love that. Thank you for this answer, honest answer, and inspiring for sure as well for many of us. So also a very nice question about learning. So what is the most valuable lesson you've learned during your career and why?
That is a really great question. There are a lot of good lessons. I said never had a problem earlier. I think that one is the one that's helped me the most. But I think I'm actually going to answer it with a different one. And it's the lesson that I learned with the story I told about Frank, the manager who helped me. And the lesson there is about listening and how to listen. And it's really easy to misperceive that lesson and say, oh, I should just listen and I shouldn't share my opinion and I should take other people's opinions. And I think that everyone should be opinionated and have strong opinions, but be willing to listen to others' opinions and let them change you. And really learning how to listen to people and, get off your soapbox or whatever else it is. I was definitely on one back then, right? But really having the ability to listen, take in what people are saying, and then be able to respond to it and pay respect to what they said. But not, by listening, it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say, but I do think you should respect what people are saying. And heck, maybe there's some Colin lessons wrapped up in that, right? That if people were able to listen and just respect that a little bit more, maybe we'd be in a different state today. Maybe the social climate in America would be a little bit different if we had been able to have conversations. So I know it was about work, and to answer the why, for me, the why is that really showing an ability to listen and adapt and change and approach things where everyone's succeeding is the goal helped me a lot in my career. I don't think I would be where I am today if I didn't take that approach.
Thank you. What would be, as a follow-up question from my side, what would be your go-to tip? Like, how can I start listening? What should I do as the first step? Because I suppose many people believe that they're listening, but how do I even know if I'm really listening?
That's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. I think that the power of feedback is really, really good. So this is the type of thing that you can ask people who work with you and people who report to you. Do I listen? Am I just always talking over you? Am I actually taking your feedback? We just had a meeting and I'm trying to listen better. Did I do a good job in that meeting or did I do a bad job? Can we talk about that? We've started a thing with the Mailchimp executive team where we have peer coaches working on leadership behaviors. And my peer coach is our CFO. And we actually just had our peer coaching session this morning. And so I'm able to ask him, you were in a meeting with me last week. Was I doing better at my customer behavior or my core leadership behavior, which for me is customer obsessed, being obsessed with our customers. And so I think that I would say maybe rely on other people to tell you, because you judging whether you're listening or not probably won't go over super well.
I like that. There is another question. This is pretty strictly work related. So how do you balance in such a big tech company, trying the state-of-the-art tech, but not going too fast or too many changes according to the customer needs?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually take a pretty opinionated stance on this that's not super popular, which is I tend to not like using state-of-the-art technology. There's actually a great post written by an engineer who worked at Mailchimp for a little while called, I think it's called Use Boring Technology. His name's Dan McKinley, that we actually put into some of our ethos as how we run engineering. That, if you're using super latest and greatest new technology, there's a lot of cognitive load you're going to have to place on learning it and making sure that it works right. And what you really should be doing is like, okay, focus on the technology that is just tried and true, is definitely going to work, right? We use MySQL for databases and it just works. We don't have to like invent anything new. The way that replication works just works. And so we can just take that concern and go, bloop, it's basically covered. I'm going to focus instead on what customers need. And I really have a really big stance that what matters the most is what impact you can make on customers and not the new latest and greatest technology that you get to use, because that's always changing. You're going to feel like the cat chasing the little laser pointer, right? You're never going to actually catch it. It's just the laser is going to be pointing around and you're going to go run around and catch it. You actually can catch customer success. And, programming language and new tools and all of that just don't really matter that much. And I've had lots of debates about this. I'm sure there's engineers watching that are totally disagreeing with me. And just to show you how much I go in on this, Mailchimp uses PHP. which is commonly regarded as not the best of programming languages. Although if you feel that way and you haven't used the latest version, maybe you should try it. But yeah, so we don't really balance that out super well. We take a pretty opinionated stance, and we're like, we're going to use this technology and this framework. And I could go on this for a while. There's a thing that people often use, a term people use called polyglot. And it's like one of those terms that sort of out you as being a technologist. You're either a technologist or a linguist, because it means multilingual. And so a lot of software shops go polyglot, and they say, you can use whatever language you want to get the job done. You communicate with other parts of the system through an open API or a closed API, but an API. I believe in the different approach. I think you should be monoglot as much as possible, because it enables teams to help each other and not have to learn their languages and their systems. And like I said, it reduces all of the cognitive load you have to do any work. So anyway, long answer. Sorry, I could talk about this one for a very long time.
Yeah, I can totally see that you're very passionate about this topic. The engineer is coming out.
Whoever asked it, if you want to talk more, find me on Twitter or LinkedIn. We can have a fun conversation about it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. So there is another question from an American living in Bern. And she would like to know if you could share a few tips of how to make a good pitch if you're someone who is starting their startup.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, well, I guess it depends on who you're pitching it to, but assuming that you're pitching to investors and you're trying to get investors to invest in your company, I think that the biggest thing is to talk about if you're really, really early, is to understand the users that you're going after, how you're going to go after them, and have a really strong user growth story. So startups are valuable for one of two reasons. They're valuable because they're making money and they're pocketing it, or because they're adding users and they're getting more and more and more users. So what I find to be the case is usually in very early stage companies, they can't really tell a revenue story because they don't have any yet. So if you're pitching an idea, I would shy away from talking tons about revenue and revenue potential. Sure, you can talk about the total addressable market and how much money there is to be captured. But what I would focus on is convincing investors that you know how to find the users, that you're going to get user growth, and that's really what you're going to be focused on, and that you understand how to focus on that. And investors will likely hear that and start to have some belief in you. It'd be even better if you could show that you've already gotten a little bit of user growth and what you're doing with that. So if there's any way you can come in and say, I have gotten a few users, here's the feedback we've gotten from them, and we've vetted it across a couple more users, so that your user growth story isn't total fiction, that there's a little bit of research and fact behind it. That would be my advice.
Thank you. Useful advice for sure. Any specific tips for introverts for pitching?
Oh my goodness. Get out of your skin. Find an extrovert to mimic, maybe. I don't know. I guess what I would say is find a coach. The thing that's been the best for me with getting over my my fears and some of my stresses around talking and presenting were finding a talking coach. And the biggest lesson for me from the coach was, he said that people want to hear stories. And I was like, wait, I can tell stories. That I can do. Like, I don't feel like I can talk with a ton of expertise on a ton of subjects, but stories I can tell, right? So that just gave me a way to unlock it. And then there actually are some physiological things you can do to make yourself speak better. I have a cup of warm water with lemon in it because my voice gets really scratchy. I feel it happening right now. And as I take a sip, my voice starts to feel better, which gives me confidence and then creates a cycle. As I noted earlier, I do a Superman pose before I speak. It looks really goofy, but every single time I do it, I feel better. So find those types of things that are going to make you feel better.
Yeah, that's great tips. So I think we are starting to run out of time shortly. So maybe one last question. I mean, we have talked a lot about the COVID and all these things, but I mean, Switzerland is hitting the second wave again. Everybody's being sent back to their homes again. Do you have any personal tips to share? What have you done? We already talked about it actually before we started a little bit. What do you have anything to share? How can we cope with it? Or what could we do to make our lives better here at home?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like I said, with diversity and racism, I don't have the answers for everyone. I wish I did. What has worked for me is exercise and focusing on that and finding new habits. So my wife and I just randomly one day, the first weekend, we took a walk around our neighborhood and we found a bunch of streets we'd never been down. And it was really fun to walk and talk. And we're super fortunate because our kids are old enough that we can leave them alone for a little while. We have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so we can leave them alone for an hour, 2 hours. And it was such a great walk that the next day we did it again. And then the next day we did it again. And now it's an everyday thing. So for 30 weeks, we've probably not walked 6 or 7 days. And it's like, 3 miles, which is like, I don't know, almost 7 kilometers, maybe. I think if I did the math right, 6 point something. Or maybe I did that backwards. Anyway, it's some distance. And that has just been really good for me and my wife. It's gotten us closer. I've heard a lot of people talk about the separation of work and home and not having that ability. I am super fortunate because I have an office with a door that I can shut. The door's right over this shoulder. And I take my laptop and I go whoop and close the lid and I leave this room and I'm not at work. And I'm super specific about it. I take a good lunch break and either go for a walk or go work out. Exercise is pretty important to my mental well-being. I also started gardening. I don't know, it makes me feel happy. I grew things. They actually successfully lived. It was pretty great. So I don't know. I think everybody's strategies are going to be different. Yoga also has been really great for me. I think it can be super dangerous just to sit in a chair all day. So finding ways to get up and around. I think that, whatever things you as an individual use to cope, lean in on those more than you might think you need to. I'm also a big believer in therapy and I've kept it going. So I have it's not Zoom, it's another video-based platform that I meet with my therapist every month. And even though there have been times where I'm like, I don't have anything to talk about, I still meet with her and get a good refresher on like, hey, how do I deal with anxiety and how do I deal with guilt and how do I, make sure I'm getting enough exercise and all of the things that are tough for me.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm sure that everybody learned something new that they could do in the upcoming months. Try something new. I heard that a lot of people bought dogs, so that's something that...
Yeah, I've heard the same. I think that, dogs have, I have a coworker who just showed me a video yesterday of the new puppy he's got. We have an old dog.
Cool. Thank you so much, Eric, for this inspiring and very personal talk as well. I mean, we heard a lot about your professional and personal life, which is obviously always much more interesting than just the business talk. So yeah, thank you so much. I would also like to thank Frederica, of course, for chat with Eric. Once again, thanks to the US Embassy for making this happen. of course, also our tech guy. I don't know if we are able to see Daniel Dobos, but we, of course, have somebody at the background who also makes all this happen. And yeah, last but not least, thanks for the audience for listening. And I hope you can all take something new with you. Yeah, and keep on learning, right? I think that's something we all need to do.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions to the audience, and thanks to all of you for putting this together and having me. And I know it's a little later in the evening your time. I appreciate the making the time work for me here in the States. So it was really fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. Eric, that was very rich and inspiring. I thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Wait. So